Hello and welcome everybody. This is Heflamoke here and you're listening to the Target Show, sponsored by of course 2P, which will also deliver a nice news article about this, and of course Hitbox makes this all possible. That's why we are here today on the Hitbox platform. You can see me, and of course my guest today is Mr. Sayori from Beyond the Summit. It's an honor to have you here, to be honest. I mean, I already had one interview with you. That was some month ago at the DreamHack Bucharest, where I was sitting down with you and Gods. And now a podcast, of course, is a totally different format. You actually have a format yourself, a podcast, just to begin with that.
I do. Yep, the Zyori podcast, your original name. I love this kind of content. I mean, I like to talk in general. That's kind of why I got into doing Dota and esports commentary. But I've always done my podcast to have a platform where I can bitch about the stuff that I can't talk about on stream. You know, I can't talk about politics so much when I'm casting Dota, so I like having that avenue to really get all that angst out and have somewhere to talk about it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also a big fan because I don't know. First of all, of course, I like to talk with people about certain things, especially around the scene, esports and everything. And a podcast is something that I don't know, conveys this. Plus, you travel a lot. I also get my good share of traveling at the moment, so downloading some nice MP3 of the latest podcasts, of the latest shows whatsoever, may it be I don't know, Coffee with Toffees or other interviews. It's just nice. You can listen to stuff while you, I don't know, sitting in some boring train or plane whatsoever.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sayori, tell me something about your backgrounds. I mean, I don't want to go too far back, except for one viewer questions. People ask me, what does your name actually mean? Where does it come from?
It's a really lame story. There's really like most people that are in the scene, usually your name gets picked at a very young age before you have the wherewithal to think, hey, maybe this is gonna come back to bite me one of these days in the future. It's not a bad name. I like it. It's very original. People ask me how to pronounce it all the time. Is it Zyori? Is it Ziori? And honestly, I don't give a shit. Whatever you want to say. I'm not gonna be offended either way. The source of the name is I wanted something that sounded a little bit Asian. I'm not gonna lie. I thought Asians were really good at video games when I was a sprout, and I thought Z's were really cool. So I started with a Z, went to the Y, and then added an Ori, and there you go. I just kind of pieced it together letter by letter and came up with a word. So
Okay, now I'm actually disappointed
it's
because
original.
I thought it had like some crazy deeper meaning whatsoever.
I wish it did.
It sounds so mystical, like some tribe in Amazonas
Yeah,
or something.
I also went by the handle Winks with a Z for a while instead of an S. That was my main on World of Warcraft for like 4 years. That's what people called me before I switched over to Zyori, which kind of came out of nowhere. I wanted something cooler than Winks. I don't even know how I came up with Winks. It was really just completely random, and I thought it was funny one day at a time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I actually didn't expect that you just really made it up. At least you have been creative, not like my name that is completely a ripoff of Counter-Strike grenades, pretty much all put together. But the name is
There
now
you go.
floating around for what, 15 years or longer, so I can't change it anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the problem. Once you're locked, you're just branded that way. You're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Name changes, I think mostly backfire. I don't know if Bulba is still playing as Flo, but he will forever be Bulba. Just give up on this whole Flo thing. I'm
This is
not so
anyway
keen
with
on
the,
the
with the
name.
name changes. Look at No Tail. Like No Tail will never be Big Daddy. Like even the casters
Yeah.
mix it up unconsciously
He
most of the time.
embraces it though. Sometimes his name in game is Big Daddy No Tail. So that makes me a little less apprehensive about that one in particular. I don't know, maybe I'm just biased towards No Tail. I think No Tail is a really cool handle.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes me upset about that one. No Tail is a really awesome name that I don't know what it means, but it's still cool. Big Daddy, it's kind of funny in that like I'm the Big Daddy, but
No,
do you
I
really
told him
want
the
that to
same at
be what
DreamHack, by
people
the
know
way.
you as?
I told him exactly the same. It's like Coca-Cola suddenly renaming into brown soup with bubbles. Like, it's just a horrible mar marketing step. Anyway, I want to talk a bit more about you because you're not just anyone, any guy who comes into esport and wants to do something. You actually did have education that prepares you for
Mhm.
what is, yeah, to be expected in this scene because it's a harsh scene. It's a lot of economics, a lot of marketing, branding. We just talked about that. It's about, yeah, building your own brand, building brands of companies, and also make them financially feasible. So, what did you actually
Yeah.
study?
I have a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship, which is a very pretentious and fancy way to
Yeah.
say essentially business administration. It was like two credits different from the business administration course. Instead of two like public admin courses, I took some creative and innovation courses, and I think I took an art class as well. So it's a pretty standard business degree with a little bit more of a focus on small business. And the big takeaway that the people in charge of that department, it's a pretty rare degree to find. A lot of universities have a ton of different business degrees like international business, PR, human resources, all this kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Business administration is one of the core ones, business management. And my university just happened to have entrepreneurship, and I chose it just because it sounded like the most interesting out of all of them. I actually started as computer science my first year before I switched to business. And the big takeaway was that there were two things. One, that the idea of entrepreneurship, which is identifying opportunities and finding ways to make those opportunities financially viable, that they would argue that it's not just serendipity. There's an actual formula, there's a mindset, there's a process that you can go through that will yield a positive result in terms of having a mindset that allows you to see opportunities and to see how two independent things could work together to make a new thing. That's kind of what they call innovation, build on what already exists. And that you can actually take that and develop it as a skill to utilize that in whatever industry or business you want to go into. So I think that's cool. I use the word pretentious a lot to describe it. I think it's a little bit overblown and kind of, the whole academia thing is a bit too grandiose, but it was fun. I'm glad I have kind of a backup plan, so to speak. I got lucky in my timeline because I discovered esports when I was a sophomore in undergrad. So I had a lot of free time when I first started out. In the first year or so when I was casting StarCraft, I just practiced casting replays, casting little 1v1 show matches with my friends, just kind of anything I could. And I was lucky enough to not need to make money from esports, but still have the opportunity to spend a lot of time doing it and developing my skill set. So in that sense, the timing worked out very well for me.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a very, I don't know, common thing. Like I don't think you find like entrepreneur as a, I don't know, academic graduation anywhere else but in the US or something, because you already said it.
Probably
like mostly
not.
it's split up in certain section like human resourcing, PR, blah blah blah.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is just one of those sections, but it's just a very rare thing to have a degree for. And it's actually,
Yeah.
it's a Bachelor of Science, not a Bachelor of Arts, which is something people confuse a lot. Because again, it's the idea is that you can follow a pseudo-scientific method to create good businesses. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I was like 3 courses short of a computer science major. So for all intents and purposes, I have a minor in computer science, even though it's not official. I have basic programming skills, mostly outdated stuff. I do PHP and MySQL. Those are my 2 big languages.
Yeah.
So, woo, really going to make the big bucks with that. But I at least have the foundation. So it actually does come in handy because I can interface. I'm in charge of the BTS website right now, so I can interface with the developers very easily. Back in the day, a few years ago when I was doing just kind of freelance esports work before I made it, so to speak, and was getting enough to really make a living. I was doing contracting web development work with some of my local friends that I met at university. So I've always had that as kind of a secondary revenue source so that I could put a lot of time into doing
Oh, a
esports
lot of
stuff.
people still do that. Like a lot of tournament organizers, they not just make their own labels, they just do that on the side to actually get the budget for some of their small tournaments. So that's kind of a common thing when guys come from the technology part. But talking about your studies and how that prepared you, I mean, obviously I don't want to talk about what you already achieved because everybody knows you anyway. So that's like, it's an old story and you have your own podcast about it. But in comparison, for example, let's take any entrepreneur that has less experience, because you had it in university, and even though you said it's not a very specific or it wasn't a very specific study, do you think that prepared you well for what's here to come in esports? Because the fact is, like a lot of the people we know, even the big names, they don't even have any business background or anything close to it, because esport is just an industry that completely starts from scratch.
I think it prepared me surprisingly well. That's one of the problems with esports, is that there isn't really a great infrastructure to get from point A to point D, really. It's not even about A and B, but there's a lot of steps you need to go through.
Yeah.
And even if you want to aspire to a job that's very hard to get, for example, you really like football, you want to work in the NFL in some huge capacity. The guy that's in charge of the NFL right now, what's his name? Goodell? What is it? Roger Goodell or whatever the hell his name is.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time just kind of volunteering and going through the ropes and just getting as much experience as possible. There was a system in place for him to say, I want this job. It's a very hard job to get, but if I go all in, I do all these things, I meet all these people, I learn all this stuff, there's a chance I could get there. and you have, education courses. You can study turf management and all these really obscure things, sports management. None of that exists for esports.
Yeah.
If you say, okay, I'm in university right now, I haven't chosen my major, I'm undeclared, and I really want to work in esports, what am I going to do? There's not really a major for that. I mean, you
Yeah.
can look at something very specialized, like you could focus on video production, do like a radio, television, film degree. If you're an artist, of course, you could focus on some kind of graphic design and do stuff that way. There are niches you can fill, but there isn't just a general, I'm a guy that knows a lot of shit about esports, and it's hard to kind of get there. You got to really be persistent and really push through, and that is one thing that I think college in general just sort of helped prepare me for. Like I had that time to develop my own sense of what I want to do and how I want to do it instead of jumping right into the job market. But before I came to BTS, I was doing stuff myself, and I honestly thought I was better at doing things than I was at the time. Like in retrospect, like all the shit that I did was just awful, and I'm kind of embarrassed about it. But at the time, I thought it was really awesome. This content is so great. People are going to love
That's
it. Why is
always
nobody
like
watching this? Yeah,
If you look a
that's
year
part of
back,
it's just
you
part of
embarrass.
maturing,
I don't know. You really look
Yeah,
back and you embarrass what you kind of see. It may be
yeah.
casts or certain projects, production, whatsoever. No, but
Um,
I actually asked this question because I'm always a bit jealous, like looking around if you, for example, build a network around LinkedIn or anything, and you see a lot of people in certain positions and what they have as like their degrees in academics. And then I'm kind of jealous because I'm a relatively old guy, 30 years old. I studied politics and history. I worked after, and then I
uh,
studied medicine, just like gods. Actually, I went a bit further, deep into med study, like med school, and then I quit for
okay.
it. So I'm jealous because I have to learn all these basics, like branding, marketing, all that stuff, pretty much from the internet. I'm learning every single day, like it's
Yeah.
university. But I mean, the internet has an abundance of knowledge there, so I think as a smart guy, you
Yeah.
can always adapt.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. Those basics of just business stuff have given me a foundation to kind of know general rights from wrongs and to have a valid voice. At BTS, it's really like the core four, the two Davids, myself, and K-pop Toasters. We're like the four full-time folks that put our heads together, and whenever there's a big decision to be made, we're kind of the ones that really hash it out. And that just general background has given me a stronger voice in that arena and the ability to say, no, we shouldn't do it because of X principle, or this is a concept that we studied and this is a common mistake. No, we shouldn't give people 5 options. Like a great example is you have a restaurant and you're serving drinks. If you offer people a small, medium, and large, or you have an alternate universe where you offer them just small or large,
Yeah,
you will sell more larges with just 2 options than you will with the 3 options. When you have 3 options, more people will buy medium than anything else. When you have 2 options, more people will buy large rather than small. So that's an example of how limiting choice and perspective can have a very direct kind of impact on your bottom line. And that's that very basic concept can be applied to a lot of things, which you can summarize as there's some key to simplicity in a lot of cases where people just want 2 good options rather than 6 mediocre options, stuff like that.
yeah.
Those little tidbits have definitely come in handy,
And
for sure.
And given the fact that, yeah, what you just said, that you can like look at the market, you have some experience with it, and you always analyze what is there to come for future projects because you don't want to land, I don't know, in a field where you have many competitors. You always try to get a niche, or if you are actually in a field of many competitors, you always try to fight for your major market share. That's like the nature of business. So, linked to this statement, pretty much, beyond the summit, we have you yourself, obviously as a member of Beyond the Summit, but also Beyond the Summit as an organization that went since pretty much Summit 1 also into organizing their own events, the House Cup. Now that we have
Hmm.
next year the major system, like does that change anything? I know there have been a lot of talks with Filat about the system. LD said something about it. You talked a bit about it in your podcast. And what do you think about this?
There's still a absurd amount of question marks
Yep.
surrounding that
Yep.
entire thing. So for like one thing that BTS has just done very well, and I think better than a lot of other studios in the esports space in general, not even just Dota 2, is what's called environmental scanning, which is just looking around at the current paradigm, where things are now and where things are going, and trying to move accordingly so that you don't get left behind and you're kind of keeping up with everyone else. A great example of that is how just the general financial model has changed over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, ad revenue was the shit.
Yeah.
Everyone's raking in cash from rolling ads. Twitch introduced the like 2-minute ad chunks, the 3-minute ad chunks. Everybody's making more money, and then ad block happens, and ad block becomes this prevalent virus that everyone's just installing. And if
Yep.
all of a sudden you're in an area, you're doing content that focuses on the SEA regions or the CIS regions, all of a sudden your ad revenue is absolute ass.
Yeah, you're
So
completely
we had to
screwed in
find
that
ways.
region.
Yeah, so we just had to find ways to adjust the business model, and one of the ways that we did that was backing off of relying solely on, not solely, but primarily on ad revenue and doing stuff like building our sponsorship branding. And somebody made an interesting post on Reddit after the Summit 3 that just compared the camera shot of Summit 1, Summit 2, and Summit 3, and how each one there were like more logos and more
Yeah.
shit in the background, and the
Yeah.
camera shot was more full. And maybe we went a little bit overboard with the third rendition, but I think that really demonstrates how our model has shifted from less about ad revenue and having commercial breaks on the stream and more about selling that real estate that we've always had at our disposal but have never really capitalized on, and diversifying that revenue stream so that you're not just bottlenecked by, oh shit, everybody decided to install ad block. Now we're making half as much money as we were this time last year, and now we have a much more stable foundation for bringing in revenue.
By the way,
That's a very basic example, but I think BTS has done well with that. So my lame answer to your really meaty question is you just have to play a heads-up game. And anytime some new little tidbit comes out or there's some new scuttlebutt, we think about it, we talk about it, and try to make plan. And then we have a contingency plan, and then oh shit, emergency button plan. Usually when we are dealing with this kind of stuff where there's still a lot of question marks, and just kind of play mafia and try to piece things in as logically as we can, and then make tentative plans from there. There's kind of an art to it, really. There's no real right now. There's no real solid game plan because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with majors. Who's going to run the majors? Will Valve want us to be involved with the majors? Will we be offered a major? Are we going to be ignored totally? Do we need to do more of our own content?
What's your
All of
favorite,
these are really important questions that we don't have answers to.
What would be the favorite model? So let's just spin this, okay, into a reality. Next year, then majors are coming, 3 to 4 every year. The international, if it remains like this as a title, as a fourth major or something like that, that is also a question mark because nobody really answered it. Maybe you have some insight on that. But
I would assume it would be kind of the final major. I don't know, but it just seems logical that you have whatever it is, 3 majors, and then the international is like the final major that culminates the whole thing and kind of wraps up the season. And then at the end of the season, you still have this dead period of 3 weeks to 4 weeks or whatever it is where people are shuffling around. And I would imagine, I don't know if Valve is going to have open trading for players after each major or if it'll be a once a year type deal. Those kind of things also
that
make a
would
big
be horrible
difference
for the scene because we're in constant flux anyway. So that no, I don't think that can happen. But talking about the talents and that, I mean, for the international right now, what actually gets you to the international? That is, okay. From my perspective, it is of course you being a talent that is recognized by the community. It's a lot of being part of something big, and networking. Like these 3 things will pretty much get you to the TI. Do you agree?
I think so, yeah. I mean, nobody knows exactly what Valve's formula is, and I don't know that they even have a strict formula or if it's more of a gut feeling with who they want to go with and, how they decide to use the talent in what venue. I think they have, now with 4 TIs, they've done a fair bit of data collection in terms of what the audience likes, what they don't like, what the talent likes, complaints that they've had, complaints that players have had. So I'm really curious what they're going to do this go around. I think the 3 things you mentioned are pretty comprehensive of the things that Valve looks for. In general, I think Valve likes to go with the safe bets, and especially now that TI is just so unbelievably massive and it's such a flagship for their game and their brand. I think they're going to continue to play it more safe in terms of people that have been invited in the past that did a good job, that didn't say anything bad on air and were easy to work with, will continue to be favored over Valve, even if you could make a case that a newcomer is a better caster, the community Reddit likes them a little bit more, whatever it is. I think they'll still tend to go with people that have a proven track record of being on that big stage and not choking. And that's why it's a little scary for folks like myself, where I think I have a pretty good track record. I feel like I should be a shoe-in this go-around, but it's still kind of scary. And
talking about that, by the way, I mean, you kind of shifted your attention in 2014 already, also a bit to the hosting part. because you started off as a caster. You did a great, I don't know if I can call it learning curve or improvement curve whatsoever. I mean, you, like, after some publicity trouble in the last year, you made such a progress that even Reddit loved it. Like, all the pitchforks
Yeah.
were suddenly gone, and then they were like, wow, that is Sayori. That is not the same Sayori we knew and everything. So all that besides, so Reddit already gave you like a little golden star. But besides that, you had the hosting part as a like a new
Yeah.
quality of yours. Is that something you want to pursue over casting?
I think generally, yes. I've been asked this question a couple times, and I've given a lot of different answers, and I think that's kind of just key evidence as to how my mindset is constantly changing. Again, like this crazy evolving scene, things change so quickly that sometimes you just have to take a step back and go, am I on the right path right now? Am I pursuing the proper avenue? Am I monetizing properly? Am I with the right group of people? Would I be doing better if I was, doing X game or working with X studio or, working less hours or whatever it is? I feel like I'm constantly asking myself these kind of questions and doing these self-analytical checks. And it boils down to I really like hosting. I mean, I've always enjoyed interactive stuff like doing interviews, doing podcasts, these kinds of things. And hosting is very similar to that because I'm just naturally inquisitive. I like Dota, I like video games. I'm in all of these players, and it's just very easy for me to sit there like,
Yeah.
so your job today is to sit on this panel and ask these people questions. Like,
Yeah.
all right, fucking A, I'm ready. That's what I wanted to do today. So I really enjoy hosting. I think it's really fun. It's a little bit stressful. It's a slightly different skill set. But I really enjoy it. Now, the issue is that's not something that you can reliably say, I'm going to do that. There's not enough hosting gigs where that can be your full-time job unless you're one of the few that gets to host like every major event, and then you can make enough off talent fees that
Yeah.
you basically have your salary. That's like the dream that everyone aspires to that you just can't count on because it's really hard to be that,
And there's also
select
another
few
problem
people
with
that
it. I
get
mean,
to work all those events.
you have, for example, the organizations. Like the best example, Red Eye, for example, last year ESL won. He was with ESL, so obviously he was the choice. And I mean, the guy is awesome. He just has a
Yeah.
charisma, whatever you want to call it.
He's got the
What
experience, dude. He's been around forever.
And that too, obviously. But I mean, he as a person, I mean, I watch him on some podcasts, and even if he's in his small little apartment with a just as horrible background as mine, like, I know it's still awesome to watch him. The way he talks, the way the experience he shares and everything, how he leads a conversation, that's just nice. But let's not just glorify him right now because it's about you, this podcast.
That's okay.
No, like
Respect.
the problem is that we have some of these hosting gigs, as you call it. They bring people in that are not even necessarily from the scene. So you're a Dota 2 caster, but you suddenly get someone there who is ESL stuff, Gfinity stuff, whatever stuff from an agency, because they are nice looking, better looking, whatsoever. And you think that's a problem?
I wouldn't say it's a problem. It's just it's a very competitive space. It's one of the most competitive areas of esports stuff because it's one of the most prestigious. It pays very well, and I think it's I don't want to say it's easier, but it is a little bit easier than casting. Casting is very, very draining, right? I mean,
Yep.
you've kind of done both. Casting is very high energy. You have to be really on point. If you're also self-producing and doing your own camera work, if you're doing camera work, doing the production on XSplit or OBS, and you're also the lead play-by-play caster, all of those things combined is basically your brain at 100%. You're multitasking like crazy. You're listening to people. You're checking chat to make sure the audio's okay or the stream hasn't dropped out. You're catching kills. You're analyzing. You're doing all this stuff, and your brain is at like 100%. And that's a cool feeling. That adrenaline is kind of addictive, but it's just so fucking tiring. And I've gone through those long grindy stretches where I'm casting 7 hours a day for the next 3 weeks every day without a day off, and it's fun, but it will actually burn you out. And so will going to events and hosting, but you're never going to host, 3 weeks in a row without a day off. That's just not how it works. So all this kind of coming full circle to, I really enjoy the hosting stuff. I mean, if I was offered a hosting spot for the main panel at TI5, that would probably be the top of my goals. That's like, holy shit, I think I might have actually made it. This is incredible. And I mean, I would be honored to work TI5 in any capacity, whether it's casting group stages, doing color on the panel, hosting the panel, if they invited me to do fucking dedicated obs, I would still be happy to do it, But I really enjoy the hosting stuff. And this year I just got a little bit lucky that I was the one that traveled the most. I traveled more than any other BTS staffer this
Yeah,
year.
you've been around.
And that's a combination of we've had a lot of events to go to. I really like traveling. Parker and I are the two that like traveling the most. LD doesn't really care for the long flights so much. Brian is kind of 50-50. I fucking love it, man. I am a professional traveler. I am so good at those international flights.
I
I'll
enjoy
tell
it
you,
too.
man.
I don't know why. It's like I just feel cool being
I
on a
like it.
flight.
Dude, I'll take a window seat on a 12-hour flight and not get up once. I'm a machine. I have
Yeah.
an iron bladder. I'm ready. I control my liquids. I got it down to an art. So it's a combination of that, and then also I'm kind of the most expendable in some ways. DAC is a great example where we did the remote coverage from our house here, and they really wanted a representative from the company to go, and then we sent a camera crew, and Hotvid went, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
when we looked at, okay, who's a core BTS person we can trust to coordinate all the camera people and all this stuff? Well, it's kind of one of the core four. Brian is like the lead production guy for that show, for that whole thing. And the two Davids were like LD is our grand finals caster and Gods is a key piece of panel talent. So
Yeah.
when you look at it in that light, I was the best of both worlds where I was the least valuable talent slash producer, but I was still like a BTS representative that got to go to the event. So I got to go to DAC, Star Ladder Season 12 in Bucharest. I was never supposed to go to that event. I was like number 7 on the list, but Dakota needed some time off to spend with his wife. Merlini didn't want to go, and there were someone else had some sort of a travel issue. I forget. No, Cinderin was there. Someone else that we invited couldn't go. So
Yeah.
I was, all right, Zayori, suit up. You're headed to Bucharest. So it
But
ended
it's
up that
good.
I got to travel to basically every event. I love it, and it was really just happenstance that really developed. As I talked about earlier, you don't get an opportunity to practice hosting because there aren't that many events doing it. So I got to go through this like gauntlet of events, and at the end was almost too much. I was a bit burned out for the Summit 3 because we did Star Ladder. We moved our shit out, went to Star Ladder, came back, continued setting up our house for the Summit, went to Red Bull, came back. People were already here for the Summit before I arrived back from Red Bull. I landed, and it was just like walking into fucking, the Summit has started. Holy shit, I didn't get a moment to breathe. So it was good, and I learned a lot, and I got a lot of valuable experience, but I've been enjoying the past few weeks of downtime, relaxation, just fiending some Dota, I have to admit.
And I mean, I'm glad you actually traveled, for example, to Bucharest. Otherwise, I would have never met you in person, as well as like Purge and Gods, etc. So, like for me, the European events are of course more convenient because that's what I can somehow scratch together as in budget, like the I don't know, $200 flight or something going there, etc. But the Asia and US is of course the next level in cost. Anyway. Talking about market analysis, we had the whole hosting thing, the events beyond the summit and next projects, the majors. In your last podcast, you mentioned that podcasting is a horrible market actually for the Dota 2 community. We both like podcasts. We both do podcasts. We even watch, listen to them. In other scenes, they're kind of successful, like with tons of following, with I don't know. But in Dota, like Dota is such an aggressive community, and podcasting is definitely something that is not so successful. But nevertheless, you actually will have a new project soon, which you can promote right now.
Yeah, we can talk about that project a little bit. So there's like a couple issues here that we need to tackle, and I think the biggest one is our community, the Dota community, is very strange. And one great example is the way that you just look at the difference between Counter-Strike and Dota communities and how they react to fantasy leagues. We're not even going to say gambling in general. We're going to narrow it down to fantasy leagues. Dota hates it. They think it encourages DDoS. They kill babies. Every dollar earned comes from a few dead angels in heaven. I mean, they really are just vehemently against anything that has to do with online betting. And Counter-Strike, you look at the Vulcan show that they're doing there, and it's received very well. Their community sort of not encourages, but engages in the betting and gambling aspect of it as just something that real sports does, and they see it almost as like a legitimacy, that their esport has that kind of infrastructure where people can make money off of just watching and spectating the game. And they don't see it as much of a bad thing. Everybody knows that gambling can be addictive and destructive like every other thing in life, but there's this very different mindset. And I think that's kind of a good microcosm of one of the ways that our community is a little bit mental and a little bit fucky. And unfortunately, our community has been cursed with a lack of consistent content. You look at League of Legends, right? They had State of the League that Travis Gafford used to do, right? You know, Travis from all sorts of GameSpot and On Gamers and all that stuff. I've never met him, but I've heard he's a pretty nice guy. And that show was like the state of the game from StarCraft 2 for League of Legends, and it was staple. It was just popular enough when the game was growing that it kind of rode that momentum wave, and it was there. It was consistent. They had the Toffees thing going on.
Yeah.
So the League community embraced that. They're like, wow, this content's really great, and that was sort of seen as this is a golden nugget. If more people can emulate this, we can have more good content. So the community kind of embraces it. In Dota, we haven't really had that same show. StarCraft had it. State of the game. You know, you got JP McDaniel, you've got Tyler, you got Day9, all these personalities that are in control that people really want to hear from, that they trust, that are interesting. And for whatever reason in Dota, there's never been that one show that's had a consistent host, a consistent co-host that has sort of stayed the course. You know, we've had little runs like in the studio. There was Talk Dota for a little while. I think Join Dota did one. I remember that Talk Dota, the one that had Synderen and Puppy on the first episode with Toby.
Yeah, Synderen, Puppy, Toby, that was Talk Dota in the very early stages of Dota.
Yeah, so we've had these little things, but they've mostly been one-offs, and they've kind of putzed out once things have gotten a little bit difficult, once there isn't drama that week, and you have to be a little more creative with content. Once it becomes more of a grind, it just kind of disappears. And now you have someone like Toffees who really is doing the grind, and he's in a unique situation where he's kind of a stay-at-home dad right now, so he has a lot of free time to pump out content, and he's doing his kind of Dota Radio morning show-esque type format. It's not getting as much love as I think it should. Toffees works really hard. I think he has a lot of journalistic integrity. I think he brings a lot of cool ideas to the table. Obviously, when you have big players on, everybody wants to watch it, and that's just how the shows work. But In the Studio is the only podcasty type show that I know of that was somewhat consistent, that had decent viewership, even on episodes when we didn't have big guests. But it's kind of because we have just such a big collection of talent. You know, it's like LD, Gods, myself, plus Merlini on a panel talking for an hour.
I mean,
is
you
just
guys
by its
alone
nature
are
going to
already
be
the
kind of
guests
interesting.
that attract viewers, pretty much.
Yeah, but we just have so little of that, and for BTS, it's just it's a function of cost. You know, is this content, the amount of effort that goes into this content, valuable? And most of the time, the answer is no, because that's an hour of 4 people that you could call premier talent. You know, our day rate at that, if you look at like the opportunity cost of other things we could be doing, it's a pretty expensive show. And then to do a show like that, you need a dedicated producer. So that's another body you need dedicated to the show.
And
you got to build all the assets, got to do all this stuff. And the only way we were able to do that show is because of 100 TB. It was In the Studio by 100 TB. They paid for it. You know, they made the whole thing happen and made that a cost viable situation. But that's why we're not doing more content like that, because we don't have sponsors lined up to make it happen. We just it's not an effective use of our time to just YOLO shows like that, which is unfortunate because there just aren't enough people that watch them. You know, we just can't make a case for it. So there's this chicken and the egg where there aren't a lot of top-tier content producers making this kind of content, but at the same time, nobody wants to take the risk to actually do it and build that brand and get that trust there, because there aren't enough people watching unless you have a really grabby title or, all right, we're going to talk to Loda today. Yeah, sure. Then you'll get 5,000, 10,000 viewers. We're going to talk to No Tail. That's an easy, 3, 5K viewer show. But outside of that little gimmick, it's hard to really get that snowball rolling. And I really enjoy it. So that's why I've stuck with the Zyori podcast. For me, it's therapeutic. It's an outlet. I enjoy it most weeks. It's something I can call my own. But cost-wise, I mean, I don't make a penny off of it. I get a couple hundred downloads on the audio-only file per episode, maybe 1,500 views on YouTube if it's a good episode. It's not bad, but no one's getting rich off this shit. I'll tell you what.
It's also not about. I mean, it's not about like having a crazy business model behind such a podcast thing. The reason I like the podcast is, and that's why I, for example, watch yours, is because you get information you would never get on the stream. Because let's be freaking honest. On stream, everybody's fine. You have to please viewers, you have to please Reddit, sponsors, the organizer, the team, and you come home, you sit down for a Sayori podcast, or I sit down, for example, recapture like some sort of event, and then we can be freaking honest. I mean, still, of course, not in violation to certain contracts and things you should just not say, but you can say like, okay, guys, this was not the best way it went down. It could have been better that way. And that gives the community some insight how it actually could have been, should have been.
Yeah.
Because I think...
Well, that's... Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think our community is about so many things uneducated. That's why I also went on this mission. Because nobody has any idea how does a studio, how does a caster, a personality make money? And how shit that money is sometimes. Because people,
Hmm.
I talk to people and they say like, well, Hefla, you do so many projects, so many tournaments, you cast and everything, you must make a lot of money. If I tell them what I actually get from this and that this is not even enough from living, that I have to borrow
Yeah,
money and whatnot to actually survive a month, then they're totally surprised. And yeah, that brings me back to the story
that's
of being not educated.
well, yeah. I mean, that's that. You don't need to be educated to get rich, but that is one of the issues with our industry just being so small is that you have to be very careful about, quote, talking shit and
Yeah,
burning bridges and just saying things that may piss other people off. And that was one thing I didn't realize earlier on. Not that I pissed a lot of people off, but just how often people listen, absorb, and then say absolutely nothing and just dock that. Oh, that was a little shot right there. Okay, noted. And then a year later, that's when you come back and realize, oh, that's why they don't want to come on my show now. Oh, that's why they won't do an interview on my platform. Okay, I get it. And it kind of sucks that you have to be that PR conscious a lot of the time because I kind of pride myself on being honest. That's what those
yeah,
Zyori podcasts post events are all about. And I think that's I'm a fairly firm believer, not black and white, but I think it's true most of the time. And it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. And I think that is something that our community struggles with a little bit, Reddit in particular. A lot of the stuff that they do there, it's not what they're talking about, it's how they're going about talking to it. This Korok thing is a great example. I don't think that
yeah,
being a headline is necessarily a bad thing, but I think the dialogue surrounding it is toxic, disgusting, and just overall very disappointing. Um, so I try to be that kind of honest force where it's like, hey, I was at this tournament. I really liked it. I had a great time. I'd love to come back. These are all the things you did great. These are all the things you really fucked up, and I hope that you can fix in the future. And I mean, I did the same thing after the Summit 3. Hey,
yeah,
man, these are some of the things that we fucked up. These are some of the oversights. This is a very generic explanation of why I think this went wrong and how we're going to prevent it from happening again in the future. I think that dialogue is way more valuable than that fluffy kind of PR bullshit that a lot of other companies and other industries will put out there as
yeah.
as truth. That's one of the great things about our industry is that we have this kind of channel of communication almost to a
But
fault.
this is a
But
big problem in esport, by the way. This
yeah,
what you just said, like the fluffy kind of thing. Because I don't know if you read, for example,
just
the
look at that Ghost 2 Gamers article about Korok. That is the definition of fluff. Like that's just looking at some of the things that are
yeah.
out there, taking all of Charlie's shit and just saying, "Hey, look at this. This is an article." Like that is the definition of fluff, and that shit needs to go away. It just needs to stop. It's not helping anyone.
Yeah. I rather meant the fact that we make things more beautiful than they actually are around it. And
Ah, that is fair.
I'm talking even beyond PR. I mean, of course PR is always painting a nice picture of your product you sell. That's the whole point of
Hmm.
PR. But the problem is also like esport is a goddamn amazing industry because we start from scratch, pretty much every one of us, and we can watch something grow in a fast pace like we never had it in any industry in direct comparison the last I don't know how many years. That's why it's so
Hmm.
exciting, and because we can do something we
Yeah.
love. So that's the one thing. But the problem is also like that every day I read, for example, the say it slash esport Reddit. There are some articles or some other the score or some other
I love that
business.
subreddit.
Yeah, and the
Not many people go on the esports subreddit, but it's a good little subreddit. It only has
yeah,
like 7K subs or something. I've been
yeah.
using that thing for like 5 years. It's amazing.
People should go there. So guys, whoever is listening or watching, go to Reddit esports.
Support
There's
it.
some nice threads there. Anyway, but the problem
Yeah.
is every day, like mushrooms, you have articles popping up how amazing esports is, everything is growing, millions, billions, whatsoever. But like for those people, like especially you and also a tiny bit portion for local events and stuff like me, uh we know the real numbers, what's actually moving, what's improving from year to year, and it's not as fluffy as like the picture is painting it, and that's the biggest problem I have at the moment with esports. It's a horrible PR campaign, and this will bite
Yeah.
us in the ass at some point.
A little bit. I think some of that is one, there is some truth to it. The growth in esports is actually
Yeah,
ridiculous. All of that demographics information, basically, no matter what metric you use, there's been substantial growth over the last 3 to 5 years, where this balloon is still just growing like crazy. So there is a little bit of overhyping. It's uncharted territory, as you mentioned, but I think it's also that it's that lack of infrastructure we talked about. A lot of the people working in this industry and pumping out that kind of content are new blood. They're recent graduates. They're still college students. They're
yeah,
trying to get their feet wet. They're not professionals yet. It takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. It takes a lot of time to develop yourself as a professional individual. as you know, I saw one of those like blocky meme things on Facebook that are usually really stupid, but one of them that I saw that was really good was about creative outlets, artists in particular. You know, and the guy said every artist that I know really sucked for the first 3 to 5 years that he did work.
Yeah.
Anyone who works in a creative field, a creative outlet where you are using your mental ability to create something from scratch and be very creative, you're going to suck at it until you practice it a lot. And anyone that's successful in those fields goes through that really difficult period. And what makes them successful is their ability to just take those, roll with the punches, just learn from their mistakes, and just move forward. And after 5 years, you've got something pretty good. You've got a solid little foundation. And I can really empathize with that. Casting is a very creative outlet, and you're basically, you know, telling a story with your mouth instead of, you know, writing or painting or whatever it is. And the first 2 years, I really, really sucked. I was terrible. And a lot of people never get over that grindy hump where you have to put 20, 30 hours in a week just casting on the mic when no one's really listening, and the few that are listening are laughing because it's so terrible. But there's just nothing that replaces that raw practice, you know? Yeah. And I don't know how I got onto this tangent, but yeah, that resonated with me quite a bit. I think I got us off track here.
But I mean, you made quite some progress when it comes to the casting part. Either way, like
practice makes perfect.
Yeah. Talking a bit more about the business, like I mean, okay, we had the entire like community store and whatnot, but like for example, Beyond the Summit is pretty much a Twitch affiliated project as such. You're Twitch sponsored, as far as I understand it. And
yeah, BTS is exclusive to Twitch. Yes,
Twitch
BTS will.
Project.
Yes, yes, exactly.
But of course, there are some others right there. For example, Hitbox, where you guys can watch this right now. But there are some new players as well. I don't even want to talk about like the smaller ones like Africa TV, Dingit, whatever. Like just the big players that came in with a lot of money and made a lot of also bigger projects possible. For example, Asubu is one thing, especially in League of Legends. They did a lot of like big moves, and of course the biggest announcement I think 2 weeks ago was YouTube Gaming. So
yes,
your thoughts on the whole? I know you had it in your podcast already, but like short version, your thoughts on the market share battle.
Yeah, it's a huge topic, and it's really interesting actually. We live in very interesting times for this stuff that's going on. Twitch is obviously the big dog, the monopoly, if you want to use that term. I think there are a few phrases that are very overused in esports, and monopoly is one of them. And people confuse a big acquisition, like sort of collusion-based monopoly. It has a very negative connotation. There is a such thing as a natural monopoly that happens when one is just better than the others. Yeah. And I think Twitch is an example of a good natural monopoly. You know, that battle started with really Twitch and Owned 3D. It was really Justin TV and Owned 3D back in the day, right? And they were battling it out for that space in the gamer market. Justin TV said, hey, this demographic is so big, we need a brand just for gamers. Then Twitch TV was born. And Twitch TV just took over because their platform was better. It was easier to use. It was more accessible. It was easier to navigate. The functionality was there. Their deals made a lot more financial sense. Own 3D bit off a little more than they can chew financially, and they got stuck in that circle of their just constantly paying debts, and eventually they had to close shop and file bankruptcy. Twitch wins that war. Subway versus Quiznos. See you later, Quiznos. Twitch becomes the big dog. And then there's just no one else that can really compete with them in that space because they sort of had that first mover advantage in a very real way. Own 3D, there were probably platforms before that had the real first mover advantage, but Twitch was the first one to really find a way to make it work. And then since then, it's just been all growth. They made that really smart play to integrate with Xbox. We can't forget about console gamers. I know we focus on PC, but there's a fuckload of them. Yeah. Those Call of Duty guys, man, they've got huge Twitter following. So embedding that with Xbox, having the ability to stream directly from your console, that grew Twitch astronomically. So now they're this huge platform. And I don't think you can look poorly on Twitch because they took a big market share on that front. I don't really think that that's a bad thing.
No, but nobody says that. Like, it's not a bad thing because they actually earned what they have.
Yeah, some people don't realize that, but no, you're absolutely right. Now there are always byproducts of that natural monopoly. You're right. There, you have less of an incentive to innovate and push because you just have more control, and that is potentially abusable. I don't think Twitch has really abused the situation, but that potential is there, and that always scares people. Same with Alex Garfield owning Alliance and EG. Oh, they're playing each other. There could be collusion. Yeah, there could be. That's a little bit scary, but there isn't because the guy's smart enough to realize that's so fucking stupid. It's not worth it. You know why? Why would you throw away all of your integrity for one? You know, it's not logical, even though the threat is there. So fast forwarding here, I don't really know what's going to happen. I think YouTube is particularly scary because of their amount of reach. That's what one of the things that makes Twitch so valuable right now. They've got 3 million Twitter followers. You know, you're hosting an official event. It's on the front page of Twitch. They tweet about it. You are guaranteed 4 figures of viewers if it's remotely interesting content. If it's not just one person sitting there playing games,
that's guaranteed.
you know? And a lot of the time, unless you are truly one of the upper echelon top tier tournaments, like an international, an LCS, something that just stands on its own, basically backed by a developer with millions and millions of dollars, you need that reach from Twitch. You're doing yourself a disservice by going to another platform that doesn't have that same amount of reach. The Summit, for example, it would still have big viewership numbers if it was on Hitbox or Azubu or MLG or whatever, because it's a big event where people want to watch the content, but not the same amount of viewers. It will not hit the same peak than if you're on Twitch where they have that reach right now.
Absolutely.
And for a platform like Hitbox or Azubu, I think it's really hard to come up from, oh, we're a brand new platform, we're starting from Twitter count 1, to really take a dent out of Twitch. That is just so difficult. YouTube is starting with a head start. They've got YouTube, which is like the biggest website in the fucking world. They have millions and millions of subscribers. Their reach outmatches Twitch. So that's where, if they wanted to, they could really pump a lot of eyes onto esports content. And of course, we can't forget the most important thing. They've got the money to do it. They have an endless amount of money. Twitch has a lot, but it's not endless.
I mean, also, let's put this, I don't know, in words. What actually, let's just say we both make tomorrow a company. We call it, I don't know, Sayori Streaming or something, anything. So we want to compete. We want to get some market share. So what do we actually have to do? For Hitbox and Azubu, we have, of course, the fact that they actually have to get content right there. Yeah. Plus, they have to have a similar quality to Twitch. And most people are just convenient because their computer, their engine, whatsoever, it just runs smoothly with Twitch, even though sometimes other platforms would even offer a better quality. Like I think Hitbox, for example, announced now the 60 FPS, 40-something streaming, which goes even over the top in comparison to other streaming platforms. Yeah. We have Dingit, for example. This is a very new project where you have to actually install something on your PC. I have never tested it. I've never tested it. I just know it from others. You have to install a program which somehow improves your streaming performance. Don't ask me how or why.
I've never heard of this website, dingit.tv. All right. Yeah,
and they buy quite
it's a gamer
content,
website.
Actually.
Cool.
Yeah. Like,
wow.
A lot of us were approached for smaller content, like a monthly carb. I know it from Heroes of the Storm because they are organizing events and tournaments and everything. So, yeah, I know they're also doing some stuff, but also Azubu, for example, they provided a very nice platform now, which is similar to Twitch. Like I can watch it lag free, even though I'm not very Central Europe at the moment where I reside, and I was impressed. Plus, everything else feels similar to Twitch. So what does it come down to? What do you have? Twitch has the head start, but now the new player comes in, and you were totally right about one thing. They have the head start in one thing already, and this is for me the dangerous part: the bot business. Because everything we do right now as casters, I cast a game, you cast a game, what do? We record it, put it on YouTube, and there it is anyway. Right? So what is YouTube? What?
And that's something, it's funny you bring that up because it reminds me of something that I've gotten this question a lot, and it's, why does Twitch sponsor so many events that are on their platform? Like the Summit is a great example. In the context of the Summit, like you're going to do it on Twitch, you're exclusive, so why would Twitch want to have that? Why would they pay for that branding there? Because it's going to be on Twitch anyway, right? I'm like, well, you're thinking in the present. Twitch is thinking a step ahead in a future where there could be other competitors and their platform is not the one place where you do everything. So they want to keep their brand. It's like Coke, you know? You could say, well, they're the most recognizable brand in the world. Why are they going to pay millions or billions of dollars to sponsor the Super Bowl? Well, because they want to stay the most recognizable brand in the world. And it's also because Twitch knows, hey, where does all of the premium content on Twitch end up? Fucking YouTube. If YouTube breaks into the space, what's going to be good? All the YouTubers seeing Twitch logos everywhere and going, I wonder what this Twitch thing is. Oh, they're the niche for live streaming. They got in before YouTube. It's all part of a bigger plan. And it's just funny that you brought that up because there's no way Twitch does not think about these things.
Absolutely. I mean, there must also be some sort of agreement because, I mean, Twitch, for example, for those who don't stream, they might not notice, but there is actually, since, I don't know, second half of 2014 or something, like a direct Twitch to YouTube export function. You link your YouTube account, and you can export certain cut VODs directly. Back then, we had to actually cut them, and I don't even know how that worked, how we got them on YouTube. But like,
you used to be able to rip the VODs. They used to re-encode, and then they would be a separate FLV file, and you could go into the RSS feed, find the .flv, and then just rip it straight from Twitch, then upload it to YouTube. That was the way I used to do it like 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was super complicated, but now the cross promotion is there. Now it just gets scary because right now it was like, let's call this a symbiosis, because okay, we have the live streaming content, YouTube has the VOD content. What happens now if suddenly YouTube takes over the live streaming content? Then all that's left of Twitch is pretty much the quality, the community, and the head start. And that's it.
Yeah. Quality is a big thing, and that's where, like, again, the space changes so quickly. New technologies come out to reference Pied Piper. New compression algorithms come out all the time, and that changes this technology. 2 years from now, we're going to be seeing video at even higher quality at an even smaller bit rate. You know, these are the kind of things that change, and as you need new architecture for that, it's a problem. Now, this is like a classic business situation where you have a startup, and one of the advantages of a startup is the mobility, your ability to say, hey, we have 5 employees. If we want to change the angle, we can do it right now today. Hey, we want to do something different. Let's just turn. Let's do this. Once your company grows and gets more inflated and you have hundreds of employees, you can't just say, oh, this live streaming is cool, but you know what? Let's just start a blog section. Let's get rid of some of these developers and hire some writers, and let's get these blogs going on. It's a lot harder. You have a bigger ship. You know, you're driving the Titanic. You can't just steer out of the way of those icebergs anymore. You gotta hedge your bets a little bit. You gotta make bigger, more guided turns. And that's where Twitch is going to have a problem with these upstart whippersnappers here, YouTube coming in with, you know, HTML5, all this cutting edge technology. Twitch is going to have to break down some of their infrastructure and rebuild it to get that same technology as new things come out. So that's that classic, you know, old dog versus new dog kind of advantage as the space continues to shift. It's happened in the computer and electronics industry a huge amount, you know. Like IBM, for example, you know, they were the king of the course. They used to call PCs IBMs, for Christ's sake. And then, well, they got complacent. They fell off. They didn't manage you got to manage your operational excellency versus your innovation. You know, again, AOL is another great example of a company that fucked that up so hard. They were the place. America Online. We're on the internet, dude. If you're in America, you got to use AOL. They had the branding. They're throwing out free discs, and instead of innovating, they just kept giving people more free hours. Then eventually, oh yeah, this DSL thing where you're connected all the time, you don't have to dial in, came around.
I remember AOL CD crap that swapped over to Europe pretty fast. Like, I can't even remember how many AOL CDs I had in my house. It was ridiculous. I had a pile of freaking CDs and no use for it whatsoever, except for 3 hours on a ISDN dial-in, something like that. I don't know if you remember.
So you always have to manage. Yeah, you always have to manage that, looking forward and innovating new stuff, and looking at where you are now and managing your operations and striving for excellency. And that is a hard balance to strike. And it has to be somewhere in the middle, because if you're too far in the R&D and your projects don't work out, you just run out of money and your company's over. And if you don't do any kind of innovation, then some little young guy is going to come in and steal part of your market share because you're too slow to react or adapt or whatever it is. So that'll be a big issue for Twitch. And as much as I love Twitch, I'm excited to see how this kind of race for the share of gamers plays out. And one thing that Twitch has done very well since they started is being cool. You know, the Twitch after parties. I was at the first Twitch after party. It was MLG Dallas 2011, and it was just this random, like, hey, are we gonna go to a bar and hang out? Before you know it, there's just renting out the bar. The place is filled with gamers. Everyone's hanging out, drunk, yelling at each other. It was wild. It was crazy, but it was good. And Twitch realized, hey, this is what people care about. You know, one thing that they've done very well are Twitch lounges. It seems so stupid, but it's so important. You have an event like DreamHack, there needs to be a place where players can hang out, where they don't have to deal with fans, don't have to sign autographs, can just watch the games, get a little food. Overall, that's pretty cheap for Twitch. You provide them some energy drinks, maybe some pretzels, some nice TVs, a couple of game controllers. They're happy all day long.
Absolutely.
And get all of that positive branding recognition that, hey, Twitch made this happen. Twitch is fucking cool. They know what I need. They know how to make me comfortable. And that's something that I think the other up-and-coming streaming platforms will have to break into and do exceptionally well, because that's something that Twitch has always done very, very well.
Yeah. The
And
community factor is big with Twitch. That's something that's the hardest to overcome, because everybody can come in with more capital and say like, hello, the summit, we give you $500,000 if you, on top of the normal numbers, if you go with your product on our platform.
yes. Now you're getting into the interesting stuff. And this is something I talked about a lot in my podcast about in some detail, is that's the next frontier. We're not at that stage yet where the rights for these big events are worth enough that these other platforms can actually pay for them. But that's what big TV does. You know, you have an event, you have the Olympics, you know, the Masters, the Super Bowl, whatever it is, the World Cup. People are bidding for the right to have that on their channel, have that on their network. And as these new entrants come, if let's say what is a single power now becomes a triangle. Let's say we've got Twitch, YouTube, and Azubu. Those are the 3 big streaming platforms 2 years from now. When the international comes about, Valve has a couple of options. They can say, we want maximum visibility. We're just going to do the LCS model, put it everywhere. Nobody gets exclusive rights. Fuck it, we don't need the money. We want maximum reach. Or Valve can say, we're going to sell it to the highest bidder. Who's got the best platform and wants to pay the most? 500 grand? That's still very small in terms of in terms of big TV. And big TV is important, especially for the Europeans. The company, the conglomerate that owns TV6, the studio that works pretty closely with Dream League in Sweden, they bought Turtle Entertainment like 6 months ago. They own ESL.
Is that confirmed, by the way?
I think so. Is it not confirmed?
Because,
there were talks of it.
You know what's the funny part? Like I know some of these guys on a friend basis, and there was an article out months before that actually happened with the ESL Turtle Entertainment, and then everybody said like, oh no, this article is wrong and this is not gonna happen. MTGX is not gonna buy ESL. And then later suddenly it kind of happened, and I was like, okay, what's actually true? So I still don't really.
Okay, I will take it back. I don't know that it's 100% confirmed, but I think regardless, I don't know. I mean, I'm going off the same source as you are. So I mean, we've already talked about journalism and esports. So who the fuck knows? But I think regardless of that interest, right, even the scuttlebutt of that speaks to the fact that if esports continues to grow on a similar trajectory as it has been, then shit's going to change. Big TV will eventually get interested because the numbers will be big enough that they'd be foolish to not be interested. And that's when we start getting into big money, and just rights to have things on platforms becomes a much bigger deal. And part of that is just having more events that are that grandiose, you know, like having your majors, having your TIs, having events like the Summit. You have to have sort of a certain threshold of size for it to be that valuable, to bring that many viewers to a platform. So it's, like I said before, man, we live in really exciting times.
Oh,
This is fun.
It is. I have to just disagree on one thing. You say like this is a future thing, like paying for licenses, for example, but I think it kind of happens already. Maybe it does not happen for events you do because they're just too big in magnitude and therefore too expensive to bring to a certain platform. But I know it from my from my tournament or organization point of view that a lot of times actually a platform approaches you and says like, I heard you want to do a tournament. Like, I know you want to do it on Twitch. What about you do it on anywhere else? Hitbox, Asubu, whatsoever. So there is sort of a bidding for numbers already. Maybe just on a lower scale. But you're right. I think
it's starting now. Yeah. We're budding into that. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I also have to like wrap this up, not as in like abruptly wrap it up, but I don't want to exceed like the hour too much. I have some I have some questions from Reddit actually. Yoga pants or short shorts?
Yoga pants or short shorts? Jesus, those are the only two options. I would say leggings. I'm wearing leggings right now. I'm not a big short guy. That is, I leave those for David Parker. Yoga pants are okay, although despite common belief, I don't wear yoga pants to yoga. It's too offensive. I'm a leggings guy. Something about those curves, man. I don't know. Just like it.
Okay, then you have to pick between 5 heroes here. This is from Mr. O1012. Silencer, Necrophos, Io, Furion, or Faceless Void. Pick one.
Read them again.
Silencer, Necrophos, Io, Furion, or Faceless Void.
Is just pick one to play or just pick one in general?
I don't know. It's a question mark behind it. That's the entire question.
Probably Silencer, I guess. He's
come on,
the most
don't
handsome.
go the James road.
Oh man, silencer's the shit though. It's hard to. I get most frustrated, I think, when I see a silencer pick on the other team after I pick Omni Knight. That makes me really angry. I'm like, I'm trying so hard here, and you're trying harder than I am. That's really sad. Wisp is cool though. I want a Wisp Arcana. I don't know why. Why does
Yeah.
the community keep voting for these idiotic heroes to have new cosmetics? I think a Wisp Arcana would be ridiculous. I want to see what Valve would come up with for that shit.
It doesn't
Make
even
it
have to.
happen, guys.
It doesn't even have to be Arcana. Like I'm the one who says for like 2 years now or 1.5 years now, guys, why isn't there a simple cosmetic that changes the freaking color of Io? Make it purple, make it yellow, green, whatsoever. It's so easy to implement, like from a programming perspective, because you really just change the color code and everything. You could make money,
They're,
which is
they're saving it for a rainy day, dude. I don't know.
I don't
I don't
know.
have a good
Like,
answer to that one.
well, it's I don't know if we ever get this IO hat whatsoever, or IO color or anything. Make a smiley on it, something. Okay, I have two more questions here from a guy from Reddit. Just have to read it. When did you make the decision to go full esports? When did you know you made the right one, or do you? We partially talked about it, but when was the real decision you did there?
That is a very good question. It's definitely like a gray area sliding scale thing. As I mentioned earlier, I was lucky enough to discover esports while I had like 2.5 years left in undergrad. So I had a lot of time to do it as a serious hobby. And as I got better at it and became more involved, that hobby slowly became more and more career oriented. When I graduated, I was doing contract work with S2, the company that makes Heroes of New Earth. And God, I could talk about that whole thing for an hour, but there were some issues. I pressured them for a job offer that I ultimately turned down because I wanted to have a job offer right as I was moving out of undergrad. And that was in my head like, okay, I turned that down, but I'm still going to go full-time esports. And at the time, I said that, but I didn't really know what it meant in terms of like kind of living the contractor life and how to really network, how to really get contracts, and how to really come up with content that's interesting. Simply put, I was only able to get by because I was working part-time doing other stuff and I was living rent-free at my parents' house. So that wasn't a very sustainable lifestyle. There's obviously friction there when you're a college graduate. Your parents are like, how about you get a fucking real job? And you're like, no, I want to get a or a job in video games because I really like it and I'm passionate.
Yeah.
Respect my passion. I respect you making money, son. And then you just kind of whine and yell at each other. So the moment that I kind of knew I made the right choice was when I got in my car and drove out to the BTS house and I got here and it was a real thing. You know, in esports, you get a lot of offers that never come through. There's always a lot of talk and very little follow through. So there were a lot of times I told my parents, oh, this is awesome. You know, this guy's telling me about the studio he's building. It's going to be sick. I should be moving soon. And then a few weeks later, oh, the financing fell apart. Sorry, it didn't happen. And that happened so many times that I think my parents stopped believing me when
Yeah.
I said I had
Tell me
job
about
offers
it.
or contracts. And so this one, I honestly don't think they believed me until I got in my car, packed up all my shit, and said, I will see you again, never. And I just left, you know? And when I didn't come back 24 hours later crying and looking for somewhere to get a warm meal was when they realized, hey, this might be fucking legit. So that was kind of the first moment I was like, I think all this was worth it. You know, obviously after the whole sniffing incident, I took a break from esports. I worked in the real world for like 6 or 7 months, and I came up with the idea for Dota Radio. So it was, yeah, getting that full-time job offer was really the moment that I felt like all this was not a total waste of time. I'm glad that I put all this effort into it because now I can really buckle down and just focus on pumping out some pretty cool
Yeah.
content.
I think this is always the biggest frustration along the way of a young entrepreneur or anyone who wants to do anything in esport, has maybe even a clue of what direction he wants to go for, is the amount of projects you actually have to burn to the ground and sink deep into the ocean till actually one of them is the one. Like I've been
Yeah.
also through a rough year where a lot of big projects started where I put so much work into it, and in the end there comes a big bang, just one guy saying no, anything happening along the lines, and all your work is poof, gone. That kind of
Yeah,
frustrates.
I've done quite a few shows that have just turned into basically nothing. And
Yeah.
sort of before, it's like it's a really good learning experience, but you really have to get through all those failures before you start getting to the good stuff. And that goes back to that whole point I made before about creative outlets. And if you watch interviews of actors or anyone else that's been very successful in an entertainment industry, stand-up comedians, if you're an aspiring caster or any kind of aspiring content creator in esports, get into stand-up comedy. And I don't mean just like laugh at the specials on Netflix, but like the Joe Rogan Experience is a great
Yeah.
podcast, and he talks a lot about up-and-coming comics, and there's a lot of parallels in how you can only get that experience of being live on stage and bombing out by being live on stage and bombing out. Same in esports. You only get that when you're casting in front of 10,000 people and you go, Meepo Blink Dagger? Why the fuck would he buy that? What an idiot. And then you read chat and go, oh, right, that's a standard. Oh, God, I'm an idiot. Fuck! Nothing replaces those moments of just pure punching yourself in the face. And
there are tons of those, yeah.
There are a lot of resources out there that point to that's very normal, and you need to get through all that shit to get to the good stuff. So if you really want to break in and really want to be there, you just keep on trucking. You'll get there eventually if you're cut out for it.
One more question off Reddit, because it's a good one. Who have you never worked with, caster or player, that you always wanted to?
Is this Dota specific or just in general? Because I have a general one that's a pretty good answer. Dota-wise...
Give me both in a short way.
Okay, well, Dota-wise, my list is getting shorter. Toby was one of them, actually. It was like a bucket list. I always wanted to cast with Toby. I actually got to cast with him at the TI5 Hub qualifier in Bucharest. It just kind of was happenstance that it worked out that way. It was not scheduled. That was really fun, at the end. That was surprisingly good. Cool. High five. That was a nice little confident booster. But now with the summit and stuff, there's been a lot of players. I've casted with way more people than I thought I ever would. So that's been a pretty good bucket list. I do really want to cast with Shane. That's one I want to get in there. It almost happened at the hub. He told me I wasn't ready, and I'm not sure what that means, but I want to find out. In general esports, the big one is Day 9. He has been my single biggest source of inspiration for everything I've done in esports. He was one of the first esports people, stars, talent, whatever, that I looked at, really liked, and I liked his vibe and just the way he was putting out content. I really respect him as just an individual. He's a super smart guy, a very well-intentioned guy. I've met him in passing a handful of times. I don't really get starstruck around a lot of people. He is kind of the only one that I've been this close to before and just been like, oh, God, it's J9! Ah! Whoa! Like, I never wanted to approach him as a fan. I always said I wanted to wait until we were both working a DreamHack or an event where I could see him in the lounge and come up to him as equals, hey, Sean, fellow esports caster here. Nice to meet you. Yeah. How are you today? Instead of oh my God, I'm such a big fan. And since I've kind of broken through a little bit, that opportunity has never presented itself. So that hasn't been there. I don't think I'd ever really cast with him because we don't cast the same games, but I would love to meet him and just sit down and have a beer and pick that guy's brain for an hour. That is by far the #1 bucket list thing that I've had. That hands down, that would be the choice that I would make.
I have a similar experience because, like on DreamHack Bucharest, like Vilat and the entire Starlighter crew was there. Some of the Starlighter guys I knew because I've been working together with them on I don't know, the Pro Series and some other stuff. But he himself, I never met him before, except for watching the Russian stream when the English one was down or something like that. But I know he's an amazing guy. His interviews, I like it. I like how straightforward he is. And the funny part is, in most of his opinions about tournament system, LAN system and everything, I agree in so many aspects that I actually wanted to invite him on the show as well. Because I know, for example, we three together...
You're talking about the lot, right?
Yeah.
Vlad, yeah, he's a great example of it's not about what you say, it's how you say it. He is so fucking smart, but his presentation is one of my favorites. His PR control was like, do you remember at DAC when Ina posted the picture of Burning not wearing his headphones?
Yes.
I saw one of the threads. Vlad started his comment with, first of all, could you all just stop acting like fucking retards? It's like, dude, you've already just, God damn it, that is
the PR is just going nuts on him, I know.
But he really knows what he's talking about, though. Vlad is, I would fancy myself friends with him, and he is a very smart guy. I would like to go on holiday in Kiev just to hang out with him, man. Him and Ina they're good people.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I did not approach him in Bucharest because he was really like, when I was there, even at the after party, to me it felt really like a big guy. I don't know why. To you or like Purge or Gods, like. We had an interview before. I guess that was sort of the icebreaker, so I had no problem, like, I don't know, coming up and saying something. But with Vlad, it was like this crazy Russian. And the problem is I also wanted to approach him speaking Russian because I had it in school. But then I guess I didn't drink enough that evening. I kind of regret it, but I hope I can somehow repeat this.
He would appreciate it. He's one of those guys that he's very cultured. He travels a lot.
Yeah.
He loves American sports. He loves other cultures. So he's like... one of the reasons I like traveling is I love experiencing other people's cultures and seeing how, other cultures do very basic things and how that varies from America and all the other places I've been. And him and Ina both like traveling as well. So they're really fun. Like every Star Ladder that we've been to in Ukraine, they're happy to take us out, show us around, show us all the cool joints, introduce us to their local friends and all that kind of stuff. And I will say, if you approach him speaking Russian, even if it's terrible, the effort will go a long way. And I think he would really appreciate that as a good icebreaker. So
Yeah.
don't be
Well,
nervous to approach him. He's a super, super nice guy, very easy to talk to.
yeah. It was, I guess, me just being retarded, but I mean, I met so many people that I worked with and people I never worked with and I want to work with. So I was, to be honest, I was after 3 days doing solo coverage, plus my personal network and everything. I was brain-wise totally fed up already. Like, Vlad would have been like the total crap. I don't know. I have not made it to my flight on Monday. Anyway,
there comes a point where your brain just stops. I've hit that point, and it's a weird feeling. You're like, I'm just out of brain power today. I'm done. I don't have any more.
We were literally like 20 hours on the venue from early morning till the very last game was over, even longer than the casters. And after that, I had like still hotel interviews and whatnot. So it was kind of insane, the schedule, if you do this really alone. But then again, we're entrepreneurs for one reason, because we're stubborn and we want to do something for reals. Anyway, I have to really wrap this up, because otherwise it's going to be like more a lecture than a podcast. I want to thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I can talk forever. That's
same with me. That's the problem. I want to thank 2P, of course, for making this possible here, that I can do this. And also thank you to them for writing then soon a news article about our little conversation here. The same goes to Hitbox, of course, that we can use their platform, that they brought this project here. I love to do it for them. I mean, I do a lot of Hitbox projects, organize tournaments for them. So that's a cool thing. And of course, biggest thank you to you for coming. You're always up for interviews. You're always up for these kind of shows. And that makes you so amazing. Plus, you're just a guy that has a very nice business sense, represents the community, and I don't know, I kind of lack words. Your progress in the last year was, to me personally, very impressive, and for that you're maybe even a role model to many of the up-and-coming casters, which is mostly my business, because I want to boost these guys in every aspect: branding, marketing, social media, their casting, and you have definitely been one of those guys who impressed the most.
Well, you're too kind, man. I appreciate it. It definitely did not come without some hard work. There's definitely a degree of luck in this industry, just being in the right place at the right time with the right skill set around the people that want to pay for it. And I sort of found that with BTS when I was doing show content, and that's something they wanted to do. But thank you for the kind words. It's always fun doing this kind of content. I'm happy to support fellow podcasters any way that I can. For those of you out there that want to enjoy this kind of podcasting content, mine is the Zyori Podcast. It's on iTunes. If you type Zyori Podcast into Google, I'm sure it'll be the first hit. Anything else you need to know about me, you can find at Zyori.tv. So I'm pretty easy to find. But thanks for having me, man. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Okay, since he did the shoutouts already on his own, I just come to my part. Of course, you can find me at Heflamoke on Twitter. Of course, the news article, as well as the iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube upload that will happen within the next 12 to 24 hours. I'm always relatively quick with that, I hope, unless I run into some problems. It would be, of course, nice if you spread it. There will be also a Reddit post about it. Upvotes are appreciated. I hope Sayori is going to help me on that one. And yeah, besides that, of course, you always find me casting at Hefla TV, as well as on some events. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening, watching, depends where you consume this kind of content. And looking forward to my next guest, which is already coming in 2 days. And I'm going to announce it soon on Twitter. So thanks again, Sayori. Thanks for the more than 200 people here on the stream watching this. See you soon, guys.
Bye.